Hi everyone, welcome back to Maths with Mr. Yates, and today we're going to be continuing our look at card month, and what we're actually going to be looking at are shuffling techniques. Now, as I mentioned last video, cards are a great way to play games, but they need to be properly randomized to be good for games. Otherwise, you end up getting a few fairly repetitive games, which isn't really that much fun. Now, the best way to randomize them is to shuffle. So we're going to look at shuffling because unless you're good at shuffling, you're not going to get your unique games. Now, there are three kinds of shuffling that I'm going to discuss. One is overhand shuffling, the next is riffle shuffling, and the third is pile shuffling. Now, I've put apostrophes around the pile shuffling for a reason, and we'll see that just in a moment. So, without further ado, types of shuffling techniques. How well do they randomize? Do they randomize things? Let's find out. Now, how are we going to define randomized? We can't just throw a word around like that without having a clear definition to it. So let's define it. Now, I have a number of decks of cards here, and I've set all of these decks of cards up so that they are all in order. So here we've got all of our hearts together, followed by all of our spades together, all of our diamonds there, and then all of our clubs. Now, when you buy a new deck of cards, they'll usually be arranged in some kind of order like this. So when you first open a pack of cards, you are going to need to randomize them properly. But the definition we're going to use for randomized is if a particular card, for example, this 3 of diamonds, is no longer next to the 2 of diamonds and is no longer next to the 4 of diamonds, then it has been properly randomized. Now, this isn't a perfect definition, and there are a few reasons why not. One of the reasons it's not perfect is because this king of diamonds is only really next to the queen on one side. On the other side, it's next to the ace of clubs. It's not the same suit. It's not as easy to remember that it should be next to the ace of clubs. So I'm just going to consider it as randomized if it's no longer next to the queen of the queen of diamonds. So let's have a look now at our 3 shuffling techniques. Now, the first one, I'm just going to tilt this down so we can have a bit of a cleaner look at what I'm doing. The first one is our overhand shuffle. Now, the way we do the overhand shuffle is quite simple. I take off a chunk of cards and I throw them onto the top there. Whoop, I throw them onto the top. There we go. So just in a smooth motion, you take half of them, you throw some of them on the top, and you repeat this a few times. And this is, I'm calling it the swindler's shuffle here because it looks like you're doing a lot, but you're actually not really doing all that much. So I've just shuffled it a few times. Let's have a look at our results. So that's good. So I've got 1 random, 6, 7, 8, 9, none of these are really random. No, nothing here is random. There's another random one, 9, 10, jack, king, that's random. The 4 there was random. That 4 of spades is random. And we got a 3, jack, queens, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8. Oh wait, that 8. That's a random one. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, jack, ace. And there's 1. Ace 2. That 3 is a different 3. It's a 3 of hearts. King. That one's good. 3. Another one. 5, 6, 7. There we go. So how many of these were randomized? We just had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Only 11 of them were no longer next to the cards they started off in. Now, I would call that as not exactly all that random. So I'm going to say 11 is the result of that. And I'm going to call it 11 out of 52. So if you did a test and got 11 out of 52, you probably wouldn't be too proud of that particular one. So let's have a look at riffle shuffling now. Now, riffle shuffling is, again, we divide the deck roughly in half and we take our 2 halves of our deck, and let's see if I can do this properly. You sort of flick them down like that, and that was not a very good riffle shuffle. So let's try and do this again. There we go, that's a bit better. And then we can push them together. Now I'm going to do one more riffle shuffle, just because I did quite a few of those the overhand shuffle, and so it's only fair to do another one of these riffle shuffles as well. So Let's see how many of these are randomized. The ace, that's not next to it. 1, 2, 3, the 6, the 2, the 5, the 3, 8. Wow, this is looking pretty good. 9, 5, 7, 6, 10. These two aren't randomized. 8, king, jack, 9, 7, 10, ace, queen, jack, 8, queen, king. Looks like we're doing a pretty good job of these ones. These two aren't randomized. 10, 7 and 8 aren't randomized. 4, 9, 5, 10, 2, 5. Jack and queen and king here are not randomized. So, how many were randomized? Well, we'll just count this one that was not. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 that were not randomized. So, and that didn't take me long. That was just 2 or 3 different riffle shuffles. And so what number was that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So there were 9. Yep, I'm just checking I'm not going mad. So that's 9 that were not properly randomized. So that means there were 43 out of 52 that were. Now, the final one I'm going to do is the pile shuffle. And the pile shuffle, again, these ones are all ordered. So in the pile shuffle, I basically just put it in a number of piles. Doesn't matter how many. I'm going to do 5. I like to do 5 piles. And I deal those out. And this is the kind of one, this is probably the slowest shuffle. But it does give you an idea of, well, how you can get pretty, if you get practiced at this, you can do it pretty quickly. So I've done my pile shuffle. And then I just stack them all up again. And do I have any that are, well, are they all randomized? So let's have a look. 10, 5, king, 8. And you might be able to tell me right now whether or not any of them are randomized. And you might see a little bit of a pattern here as well. And if you assign numbers, so you imagine the queen is a 12, and the king is a 13, the jack is an 11, all of these cards are just 5 apart from here. 13 take 5 is 8, 8 take 5 is 3. And then jack is 11 take 5 is 6, 6 takes 5 is 1. 9 take 5 is 4, 4 take 5 is 0. Well, that's sort of not quite done it there. But anyway, at any rate, what we see is that we've randomized them by the definition, but it's not really random, is it? It's not exactly what I would count as truly random. I would say it's more quasi-random. And so technically, based on the criteria that we set up, that is a 52 out of 52. But we might be a bit suspicious that they might be a cheater because it's a bit too good. And you would expect occasionally to get some that are next to each other. Now, the interesting thing about the pile shuffle is that when you do a standard deal in a game, let's say I was dealing out a game of whist, as I deal out these cards, it's got a pile shuffle built in. And that's actually pretty good because when you play a game of whist, you're likely to have all of the same suits together. So you're likely to have, for example, someone, if they're playing in spades, we would end up with these 4 cards being played. They'd be together in a group. So doing our pile shuffle in with that is a good way to actually randomize that. So in terms of, so that's what I was saying there. Note that the pile shuffle isn't really random, but does achieve the effects of randomness. We don't have any consecutive cards. Now, what I like to do, I like to combine a pile shuffle with an in-hand riffle shuffle. And what I do is I take half of these and I just sort of slide them in there. It's sort of, it's an in-hand riffle shuffle. I sometimes worry about bending the cards that I play with. So this is one that I do in hand just to do a little riffle shuffle. It's not actually as effective as a real riffle shuffle, but it does the job. And I like to combine it with a pile shuffle so that I get the implied randomness of the pile shuffle and then I throw in some actual randomness, and there doesn't need to be a huge amount of randomness after the pile shuffle to make it a good enough amount of random for what you want to do. So that's the way I like to do it, just what I'm used to. So with that out of the way, we're going to learn a game, and the game we're going to learn is German Whist. Now, last lesson, we learnt the rules for Wist. German Whist is going to take these rules in a new direction, and it turns it into a clever, strategic two-player game. So this is specifically a game for 2 players. Now, what we've got to do is we start with a standard shuffled deck of 52 cards. And what we do is each of our 2 players gets a standard hand of 13 whist cards. I think that's 13. Let me just count it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Got too many. Let's just put one back at random. There we go. So we've got our hand of 13 cards on both sides. This is going to be our whist hand for each player. We put the remaining cards in the middle, and let's have a look. So we've got 26 cards that are left over. We turn over the top card of that. That is a 3 of spades. We're not so concerned about the number that it's got. We are concerned about the suit, because that tells us what trumps are going to be for the rest of the game. So for the rest of the game, spades are trumps. Now the player opposite the dealer goes first, and they lead a card. Now we play standard whist rules in that the card that gets led is going to define the suit that has to be followed. So if I play this 8 of hearts, I've got to play a heart on the other side. And I've got to decide on my side. And let's say I go, haha, I play the jack. I have won that trick. Now I put these cards over to the side. Doesn't really matter where they go. But because I won the trick, I get this card and put it in a pile over here. My other player gets whatever this card is and puts it in a pile next to them. And we turn the next one up. Now, because I won the last trick, I go first now. And remember that the spades are still trumps, and I may want to leave that card face up. Everyone knows what it is. If I leave that face up, then everyone remembers that spades are trumps. So I decide whether I want to win this one, and I'm going to put out this card. My opponent has a look through their cards, and they decide to play that in response. That means that I have now won this trick. These cards go over here. I get this card, it gets added to my deck, and the other player gets the other one. And we, sorry about that, we go back and forth until all of the cards have been won by one player or the other. And eventually we will exhaust our full deck of cards, and then that is the what we've got. So we reveal the next card. The winner of the last trick leads. We repeat this until all 26 of the leftover cards have been given to one player or the other. And then the real game of German Whist begins. The first part of the game was just the setup. You now have a new collection of 13 cards that you just won. And this is your hand that you're going to be playing to try to win the game. Now, whoever wins the most tricks from this second hand of cards is the overall winner of German Whist. So obviously, there are some cards you don't want to win when you're playing German Whist. So if you get a low card that is not in the trump suit, you don't want that card. You want your opponent to grab it. So you're going to try and lose that. But your opponent's going to try and lose that card as well. So because only the second half of the game actually matters. And German Whist is a really interesting, quite entertaining two-player game. It's really quick to play, and it's one that I quite like. And I find it's a really good way to play Whist if you just want a really quick, strategic two-player game. And so that is German Whist, and that was shuffling. So, happy gaming.